And good morning again. The United States has expanded its assault against the terror group ISIS in Iraq overnight, launching new airstrikes in the area around the Haditha Dam. Last month, U.S. airstrikes succeeded in pushing ISIS back from the Mosul Dam area. Both are considered key assets in the region. Secretary of Defense Hagel made the announcement while traveling today overseas.
I think the strikes that the United States took are very much in line with what President Obama said were the guiding principles of military action in Iraq.
We begin this morning with Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who sits on both the Intelligence and Foreign Relations Committee. He joins us from Miami this morning. And Senator, the president said on NBC this morning that he is going to make a speech Wednesday to the American people and outline to them the strategy. He says the next phase, as he put it, is going to be going on the offensive against ISIL. His quote, "This is not going to be an announcement on U.S. ground troops, but will be similar to the kind of counterterrorism campaigns we have carried out in the past." So I guess my question to you is, what do you want to hear from the president?
Well, I want to hear what he should have said months ago, weeks ago, and that is, first, clearly explain to the American people what our national security interests are in the region, especially in what's happening in Syria and Iraq. Accurately describe to the American people the risk that ISIL poses for us short-term and long-term and why they matter. This is a group that has made very clear they want to establish an Islamic caliphate in the Middle East, and the only way they're going to be able to do that is to drive us from the region. And the way they're going to drive us from the region is through terrorist acts, including here in the homeland. And describe to us, by the way, the unique capabilities this group have, which includes a ton of funds, weapons, but also foreign fighters, including foreign fighters with passports that allow them easy access to the United States. Second, he needs to clearly outline what we're going to do about it. And I hope that that will include a sustained air campaign involving every element of our air power, targeting their supply lines, targeting their command and control structures, and I hope that will include their central command and control structures within Syria. I also hope he's announcing that he's going to target the refineries that they now control in Syria, revenues from which they're using to fund their operations.
So you're ready for him to order airstrikes into Syria?
Absolutely. I think it's critical that we do that. If you're serious about defeating ISIL, you have to go after where they're headquartered. And what's important to understand about their presence in Syria is that they are generating revenue in Syria with former Assad refineries that they now control, and they're generating revenue from. But all of their supplies, their command and control structure, is being operated from there. You cannot defeat ISIL unless you hit them in those parts of Syria that they now control, where the Syrian government is not even present.
Well, now this is a bit of a change for you, is it not? You were a little reluctant about going into Syria, if I recall.
Well, if you recall, what the debate at that time was what the president characterized basically as a symbolic military action against the Assad government, which I thought would be counterproductive. I thought the best way to topple Assad was to arm, equip, train, and capacitate moderate rebel elements within Syria. I thought that was a better approach. This is different. We're talking about targeting ISIL, which is a group that poses an immediate danger to the United States. And if we are serious about defeating them, then we must strike them both in Syria and in Iraq. The previous debate was about what to do with Assad, and I thought the best way to topple Assad was not through airstrikes, but through equipping the moderate rebel elements.
Do you have some new intelligence information here? Because if I understood the president correctly this morning, he was not so sure that they pose a threat now to the U.S. homeland, but they could develop such a threat. Do you think they pose a threat to the homeland now?
I do. I believe they do. And I'll tell you why I believe that. First and foremost, because they are replete with both European and American fighters, more Europeans than Americans, who have passports that allow them immediate access into the United States. Second, because I think it's important not to overestimate the amount of intelligence that we have on these groups and about these groups. They have learned a lot about our intelligence gathering capabilities through a series of disclosures and other sorts of things, and they have become increasingly capable at evading detection. So for us to simply sit back and say, we don't think they pose a threat because we haven't seen one, I think would be short-sighted. The fact of the matter is this group has among their ranks hundreds, if not thousands of people with the capability of entering the United States quickly and easily, and we should not take that lightly.
You know, Senator, as the president kind of went through this this evolving explanation of our strategy, he famously said last week we didn't really have a strategy. Then he seemed to be kind of inching along here until he now says, you know, we have to really ramp it up and go after it them. Do you think that he should have shown more of a sense of urgency? He has been saying we have to do this very deliberately, but do you think he should have shown more urgency in reacting to this?
I'm going to say something I don't take lightly, and I know that there's always differences between Republicans and Democrats. I try to certainly not allow that to filter into foreign policy, something that I hope will continue to be bipartisan. But I believe this president has committed presidential malpractice in his foreign policy. And I think that Exhibit A is what he's done with the Middle East. He ran for office under the notion that our national interest in the Middle East was to disengage as quickly as possible and disentangle from the region. And that has been chaotic. It has led to a series of policy pronouncements and words that he's evicted, whether it's saying that the ISIL was the JV, whether it's setting red lines that weren't enforced. All these things have been dramatically counterproductive to our foreign policy, and I think have created some generational and reputational damage to the United States of great significance. And this continued this week. You have mixed messages coming from the administration. They don't have a strategy. Are we going to contain them or are we going to defeat them? The vice president says we're going to follow them to the gates of hell, but the president is saying that we're going to simply contain them. I mean, our allies are watching this as well. And they're concluding that the American foreign policy is in the hands of someone who does not know what he's doing.
Do you see also this changing the outlook of those in your party? I mean, we had Rand Paul, who seemed very reluctant, almost isolationist about his response. But then last week he said, if I had been in President Obama's shoes, I would have acted more decisively and strongly. I would have called Congress back into session even during recess. We should have asked for authorization for military action. He would no doubt have received it. You also have Ted Cruz this morning saying he should have reacted strongly and hit them hard in the very beginning. Are Republicans also kind of changing their outlook over this past week or so?
I hope so. Reality in the real world has a way of doing that. And, you know, look, I think my biggest problem with this notion that we should disengage is it's never worked anywhere it's ever been tried. In fact, it's been deeply counterproductive. At the root of that argument, by the way, is the belief that all these problems are created because of American engagement. Now, since my earliest days in the Senate, and certainly with regards to ISIL for weeks now, I've been arguing that if we don't deal with them now, we're going to have to deal with them later anyways, and it's going to be harder to deal with them. So the fact that there are now more voices actually echoing that, albeit weeks later, I think is a positive development and certainly an example of how reality has set in when it comes to foreign policy and our national security.